I'm from Cape Town, South Africa, and as you can see, I'll be talking about developing emotional intelligence for increased stress management and better psychological and physical health. Thank you to my collaborators, which was Estelle Swart at the Department of Educational Psychology at my university, and also Constal at Swinburne University. Background to this project. This is actually the third phase of this particular project where we're looking at developing emotional intelligence. So phase one was in 2008 to 2009. We took this program into a quite rural, previously disadvantaged school in South Africa to see if we can help develop these skills in the teachers. And we had a bit of a challenge there in terms of the context within which we presented this program, which in the end we didn't see much in terms of the statistical, empirical validation of the program. However, we could explain it in terms of the context in which we implemented this program. So then for the next two phases, we actually started to work on postgraduate students at our university. So the data that you'll see today is the 2009 to 2010 data. I've included a bit of the 2011 data that we collaborated on this year. And then actually there's a fourth phase of the project now being conducted in a corporate company where we're looking at developing emotional intelligence with the aim of increasing work engagement and also job performance, which we'll be monitoring throughout the research. So those of you that are well familiar with the construct will know that there's been an enormous amount of research being generated on the construct in the last 20, 30 years. Just a sort of a brief overview, you will see that in PAID, for instance, over that a window of 10 years, you've seen quite a large amount of articles published on the construct. Some other journals have actually put out whole of the issues just in terms of emotional intelligence, and then there's also been quite a few publications, book publications on the construct. What is emotional intelligence? Most of you sitting here probably already know the construct, but I think this summarizes it up quite well. What we typically might see is people that are very technically proficient in their job, but they lack the social skills to be able to manage people in an appropriate way to get the best performance from them. So emotional intelligence really influences those three aspects: our thoughts and decisions, behaviors and performance. I'm working with the Swinburne University Emotional Intelligence Theory and Model, and basically the definition for EI given within this model says that EI is defined as the capacity to perceive, express and understand and manage emotions in an effective manner at work. So this model was developed by taking in 1998 all of the prevalent measures of EI, giving people 8 or 9 hours of psychometric testing, and then putting all of this information into a factor analysis to see what the definitive dimensions of EI are. And what came out was these 5 dimensions, and you will see that they closely relate to the Marion-Solovay EI model. So what we have there, the first one is emotional recognition and expression. So your ability to be able to recognize your own emotions and being able to express them appropriately. And to me, that really is, if you look at EI, it's about being able to intelligently use your emotions to be successful in life. So it's being able to survey the environment and to respond reactively in the correct manner. And being aware of your emotions and being able to express effectively is a key component in that. And also sort of the starting point if you want to develop EI. Then understanding emotions, this is emotions of other people. Also emotions as you would see it in the environment, verbal and non-verbal. Emotions direct cognition really is a dimension that we didn't try to develop in this course for the reason that it links into reasoning styles. So this one we didn't particularly in this course look at. Emotional management control refers to the regulation component of EI. So the management dimension there looks at the extent to which you can maintain a positive disposition and the extent to which you can actually change your emotional state from a negative to a positive disposition. This is also quite pervasive over different situations, whereas emotional control looks at strong negative emotions that you would experience in a particular situation and your ability to be able to control those negative mood states. So when we looked at developing, we basically look at those 4 dimensions, not the emotions direct cognition dimension. And first of all, we try to teach people to develop their ability to recognize their own emotions and also understand the emotions of other people as they would see it in the environment, verbal and non-verbal. And then the second part of the course looks at the regulation of emotion. So basically teaching people to manage their emotions better and then also control emotions within certain situations. So the theoretical rationale for this research basically links in with the positive outcomes that we see and have seen quite a lot of research on in the workplace. So specifically we know that it links with organizational and leadership success, and then there's also been the meta-analysis by Schut et al. Where it's been linked to health and psychological health. Quite strong evidence there. There's quite a lot of studies being done on life satisfaction, higher EI associated with that. Then also the meta-analysis by Van Rooyen and Visviswaren, looking at work performance, and then of course all the work by Parker and colleagues in terms of academic performance. And particularly within this project, we wanted the university to buy into this, and they are actually doing that now with the mentorship program that they are launching with the first years, because we know that, as Parker et al. Has shown, that when we can increase these skills in the students, we can actually retain students. So in a monetary sense, it actually makes sense for the university to invest into these programs. And that is both at high school and university level. So what do we know about EI development? I recently submitted a paper to a nursing journal on EI as a moderator in the stress-burnout relationship. And I tried to argue that if we know it's a moderator, we should be looking at whether we can increase these skills. And then the reviewer said, you should probably say that recent empirical evidence suggests that EI training may improve EI. So I can't say that it does, but it suggests. So, but that's basically what we see here. And there is quite a few studies that have used good experimental designs and have shown scientifically in a good way that we can actually increase these skills. The evidence for this program lies within Gardner's work. She actually developed this program as a PhD, and there has been a study by Don also on some school teachers with this program. And then there are other training programs that have shown that if we invest the effort, we should be able to teach people to regulate their emotions. I added this data in. It's just from a master's student of mine. And what you see here is the moderatory effect of EI in the stress psychological health relationship. So what we have here is our Q score, occupational roles questionnaire, and the GHQ. And as you would know, higher scores in the GHQ actually indicate worse psychological health, lower scores, better psychological health. And what we see here is when we dichotomize the EI scores in terms of high and low, that we actually see the buffering effect. So the green line is people high on EI, and the blue line low on EI. And the interaction effect here, you can see actually, was significant. So what we see here is that when people are in stressful situations, they have the ability to be able to regulate emotions, be aware of the emotions, know what the triggers are for the emotions, and are able to regulate them better. It should help them in stressful situations not to develop or their psychological health would not decrease as significantly as someone that is lower on emotional intelligence. So the goals for this study was to adapt, implement, and evaluate the EI development program for postgraduate students and assess the outcomes in terms of psychological, physical health, and perceived stress. So we used to control experimental design. I have to say that logistically it was quite a challenge working with students. So we unfortunately had two groups. One was from the educational psychology department and one was from the IO psychology department in different faculties. So you see how that could have influenced the results, and I'll show you the effects that it actually had in terms of the results. There were 3 testing times: pre-program, post-program, and then a 6-month follow-up, which showed really nice development results after the 6 months. The program ran for 3 hours per week in small groups. So we had small group facilitators, which we trained, and then they worked in the small groups with the students. We gave them a training manual, and they had to do homework, and they had to go and practice these skills and then come back and we'll have a discussion on them. The program is basically developed in terms of cognitive behavioral therapy techniques and then psychoeducational framework. And then there was the homework. So the experimental group, this was the 2010 data, 24, control group 27. I just added in the 2011 data. You'll see that unfortunately I had a bit of a problem with the data in this year. It was the group was smaller, so I had a bit of a power problem when it came to the results. Mean age, you'll see typically 22 years of age, what we will expect with students. Interesting, the gender distribution showed what we have in our IS psychology uptake, and it's mostly females. I don't know whether it's like that here, but what we're starting to see is that actually we take in more females when it comes to IS psychology. The 4 psychometric measures: emotional intelligence was the Swinburne University Emotional Intelligence Test. Stress was the perceived stress scale, just a 14-item measure. Psychological health, the GHQ 12, and in physical health, the 11 psychological health symptoms by Weinfeld et al. You'll see the test-retest reliabilities over these 3 measurement periods. Generally above 0.7, you can see that they were quite stable. Just for the EI there, 0.65 going up to 0.72. But generally, the reliability was fine for the study. Then just in terms of the program contents, these are just the types of dimensions that we can develop. Basically what we do is we give people an emotional journal, we talk them through different emotions that they might experience, we teach them triggers, or we 5 minutes, okay. I'll just move on to the results. Okay, so basically this is what we found for the total EI score. You'll see that the interaction effect was significant. Now, there's a few interesting things there that you need to note. What you see here on these little numbers just basically is a macro that shows you where there were significant differences post-hoc. What you see here is that the blue lines, the experimental group, actually increased. This is where the intervention took place. And then what you see, the 6-month follow-up, still an increase, which shows that these students actually internalized these skills. What you see with the control group is actually what you would expect. There was no change over time, no significant change over time. What I need to comment on here is the differences in intercept to start off with. And the experimental group, as I said, was the economic and management faculty students, and the control group was from the educational psychology department. So you would imagine that those students have a bit more soft skills training in their becoming teachers in their course as with the management sciences students. However, we do see the trend that we would want to see, where the control group stays more or less the same and the experimental group increased. Just if we look at a breakdown in terms of the different EI dimensions, this one is very interesting because what you see is after the intervention, the control group went up significantly, and then it actually stayed level. And what I propose this shows us is that there's quite an easy saturation level when it comes to your ability to recognize your emotions. You can teach a person that ability, and then when they have been taught that, they know what it feels like when they experience a specific emotion. When we look at the regulation components, it takes a bit more time for people to actually learn the skills of regulating the emotions. So similarly, once again, what we see here is the control group, no changes. Then understanding emotions of others. This is really what one wants to see in terms of the intercept levels for the groups when they start off. And then what we see here, once again, control group, no change, but the experimental group actually quite a significant change in terms of those levels. Then emotional management, once again, similar trend. However, intercept differences, statistically significant, and then similar trend for emotional control. So what did we see in perceived stress? Here it was just marginally significant. We did see that the trend, as you would expect, that stress actually decreased. I have to say that these measures were taken at exactly the same time, so any variance in terms of student-related activities, tests, and all of that should have been controlled by the experimental design. However, what we see here is that there's a decrease and then once again an increase in stress for the educational psychology students, whereas the trend for those that had the intervention actually is that the stress levels seem to decrease. Unfortunately, not statistically significant. Psychological health, however, similar trend, and physical health also not statistically significant, but a similar trend. Just in terms of the EI, the data for 2011, 1 minute. For 2011, this is what we see. Unfortunately, due to the sample size, I think I have a power problem, but once again, a similar trend. And because the groups are better stratified, actually they start off at similar, same levels. So I'm waiting for the 6-month follow-up data to see what's going to happen, but at least the trend is there. And then similar trend for the GHQ and stress, and also physical health. So basically what I just wanted to convey with this research is that I think that there seems to be evidence, preliminary evidence, that we can teach people to manage their emotions, become aware of their emotions, start to regulate the emotions, and that when we do this, there could be positive outcomes in terms of, as we've shown here, reduced or more increase in coping and resilience in terms of the stress that people experience, so that would actually become a buffer in terms of their psychological health if they're in high stressful situations. This could then also flow through to positive outcomes if we look at the student situation in terms of better retention, more engagement in learning, etc., high academic performance. And then just the phase that should actually be phase 4 extension that we're looking at now is and we've taken this into a corporate company doing a similar program, and we're monitoring work engagement and also job performance to see to what extent increasing these skills will actually help employees to better cope with the stresses in their work environment so that they could become more engaged in their work and then deliver higher job performance. Thank you, Don.
We'll take time for